United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said, and I quote, "We are sleepwalking to climate catastrophe in our globally connected world. No country and no cooperation can insulate itself from these levels of chaos." End of quote. Early this year, the Nigerian Meteorological Agency (NIMET) made public predictions warning of heavy rains and imminent flooding in many parts of the country. Recently, the agency again issued an alert that 22 states are prone to floods as a result of torrential rainfall. Over time, it has been identified that man-made factors contribute to a large extent the complexity of the problem of flooding. And so, on this edition of Frontiers, we shall be taking a look at this problem and ways it can be cured. My name is Obiageli Ogwoke, and our guest is the Director General and CEO of National Environmental Standards and Regulation Enforcement Agency, NISRA, Professor Aliyu Jauro. Professor Aliyu, you're welcome to Frontiers.
It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
We take an next step to set the tone for today's discussion. Please stay tuned.
The pattern of rainy season this year is accompanied with heavy, long duration and high amount of water in all parts of the country. Data released by the Nigerian Meteorological Agency indicates that high amount of rain was recorded in the month of July and August. For instance, Sokoto, Zamfara, Kaduna, Jigawa, Bauchi, Kano, Borno, Gombe and Nasarawa states recorded over 300 millimeters of rain. The developments saturated the state of the soil moisture across the country, triggering flooding in most parts of the country.
Because the soil moisture condition is a factor that influences either dryness or wetness, and dryness which could lead to drought, or wetness which could lead to, if there is over wetness, which could lead to flood.
The rain pattern in the month of September might not be different from that of August, going by NIMET's prediction. States that are prone to high risk of flooding this month are Kebbi and Jigawa in the northwest, Borno, Bauchi and Taraba in the northeast, Plateau in the north-central, and Bayelsa in the south-south. Other states listed that may experience flash flood including Kano, Adamawa, Rivers, Akwa Ibom, Cross River, Abia, Imo, Enugu, Lagos, Ogun, Osun, Ondo, Oyo, and Ekiti.
We advise especially state governments to emphasize on sensitization campaigns on people living on flood-prone areas such as river valleys and people living close to drainages.
State Emergency Management Agency are therefore advised to intensify adaptive, mitigative, and response mechanisms to avert loss of lives and property.
Once more, Prof, you're welcome to Frontiers. Now, your agency's vision is to ensure a cleaner and healthier environment. In what ways is NISRA pursuing this mandate?
Well, NISRA is pursuing the mandate by ensuring that people adhere to the rules and regulations and also the guidelines. The mandate establishing the agency spell out what we are supposed to do. So we are to ensure that people adhere strictly to the laws, policies, guidelines to do with the environment. And in doing so, the act establishing the agency mandated us to come up with regulations that we use day in, day out to regulate the activities taking place in the environment by either individuals or corporate bodies. So far, we have a total of 35 environmental regulations cutting across all aspects of the environment. We have two types of environment. We have the green and the brown environment. The green environment is the natural environment, while the brown environment, we call it the built environment. This consists of industries that engage in production processes. You know, when you produce, you tend to pollute the environment. So we use those regulations to regulate their activities. We also sensitize the general public in order to ensure that they do the right thing in safeguarding the environment. We also engage with relevant stakeholders, both locally and internationally, to look at how to solve some of these environmental issues. We also engage internationally because Nigeria is a signatory to a lot of environmental agreements. So we ensure that we abide by some of these agreements that are signed by Nigeria.
All right, Prof, it has also been discovered that to a greater extent, disasters are linked to human action. Hence, the need for human beings to be environmental conscious. How would you rate the average human factors to this regard?
Well, environmental disasters can either be natural, as you have said, or can be man-made. But most of what we have now, most of them are man-made. So it's our action that the environment is fighting back, what we do to the environment. So as human beings, for instance, we are talking about climate change. And this climate change is as a result of the rise in temperature. And this rise in temperature is as a result of what we call the global warming associated with the use of some of this fossil fuel, emission of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases that are mostly generated due to human activities. And we also cut down trees indiscriminately. These trees are there to serve as a carbon sink. They absorb the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. They serve as breaking barriers when there is a strong wind. And also, if you look, we build anyhow now. We block drainages, so when it rains, it easily causes a lot of flooding. And these are some of the brunt we receive as human beings due to our actions.
All right, Prof. You talked about human actions being one of the major contributing factors to these environmental issues. Now, what attitude do you think human beings should cultivate to help alleviate these issues?
The best attitudes for us to cultivate, first of all, we should realize that this earth and this world belongs to us. We don't have any other place to go. So we must always do the right thing in order to safeguard it. So we must cultivate good habit and attitude to ensure that we have a healthier and cleaner environment for us to live. For instance, one of the major issues has to do with sanitation and waste control. We all generate waste due to our activities we consume. So this waste, we must find a very good way of treating this waste. We shouldn't just dispose it indiscriminately. When we do that, for instance, it will block our drainages. And when it does that, the water trapped there would serve as a breeding ground for mosquitoes and other diseases like cholera, typhoid fever. They are all as a result of this bad behavior. So we must cultivate the right attitude. We ensure that we have a very clean environment. We must ensure that we don't just cut down our trees indiscriminately. We should engage in tree planting. And when it comes to all environmental laws and guidelines, we should ensure that we adhere strictly, we follow this. They are meant for us to safeguard our environment and to safeguard the human health.
In keeping with the environmental, your agency's mandates, which includes, among other things, compliance with set standards and the discipline violators, how much has Nigeria achieved, most especially in the area of prosecuting these violators?
We have achieved a lot. We have had a lot of prosecutions in the court of law, and we have had a lot of cases where industries were fined and individuals were also given the option of either a fine or a jail term. But most of these penalties are not stringent enough to serve as a deterrent. So that's why presently we are reviewing our regulations in order to have a more stringent penalties that will serve as a deterrent. Take an example. When you look at our regulation on sanitation and waste control, littering is prohibited. When you have a waste, you are not supposed to throw it anyhow. You are supposed to take it to a designated point at home. You should have a garbage collector where you can drop it. So, but you look at it, people tend to throw away anything they have.
Which is contributing to obstruction of the
Obstruction.
waterways.
So if you look at the penalty there, if you are caught, the provision is that you will be fined 20,000 naira, or you will be jailed for a period of 6 months, or a combination of the two. So you can hardly find somebody that will not be able to pay the 20,000 naira. So it's not stringent enough. And also, if you look at it, we are not everywhere. So for us to keep an eye is a difficult task. So what is very, very important for people is to cultivate the habit, voluntary compliance. You should know that if you do that, you are harming yourself. So don't try it. But at the same time, we are going to review most of the regulations and increase some of these fines. So we drive this power from our act. The act was amended in 2018, where previously the act establishing the agency most of the times places a ceiling on the level of fine or the jail term. But when it was reviewed in 2018, that ceiling was removed, giving the judge the leverage to impose a stiffer penalty. So that's why we are now trying to review the regulations.
All right, Prof, you just mentioned that the agency is not everywhere. So the best approach is cultivating the best habit towards preventive measures. Because I was going to ask you that we've seen, especially in rural areas, most times when it's raining, you see people coming out to dump refuges along the drainage line, and this keeps obstructing the waterways. So is the agency doing anything maybe in terms of enforcement or monitoring to keep their eyes on such rural areas?
We have offices in all the state capitals. So we are not in all these rural areas. And you know, issues to do with environment is on the concurrent list of the 1999 Constitution. That means the federal and the state can legislate. So issues to do with sanitation and waste is almost solely within the purview of the states and the local government. They are those responsible for ensuring that this waste is collected and treated in the best way. So, but we work together, we synergize to see that we achieve our mandate. So once in a while, we go to all these rural areas to engage with them and sensitize the general public, and we meet with the officers at the local government and the state level. And annually, we have what we call as the annual stakeholders forum, where we come together to discuss issues to do with environment and see how we ensure that people abide by all these rules and regulations guiding their conduct in the environment in order to ensure that we safeguard the environment.
All right, Prof, we'll pause for a while. The program is Frontiers, and we shall be back in just a moment. Stay tuned. You're welcome back. Prof, you're aware that NIMET issued a number of predictions and alerts recently concerning floods owing to heavy rainfall. Is there some sort of inter-agency collaboration between NISRA and the National Emergency Management Agency to mitigate the impact of floods?
Yes, we always collaborate. Annually, we used to have the stakeholders meeting with the relevant agencies, not only NEMA. NEMA is key, NIMET, so NESTRIA, and other agencies to come together and look at the predictions and how to go about taking measures, mitigations, and other things. So each of these agencies has its own mandate. So we come together at times, you know, some of these mandates can be cross-cutting. So to brainstorm and see what all of us can do in order to ensure that the impact of this flood that are predicted to happen does not affect the environment and the human health much. So in our own part, we have a regulation, National Environmental Soil Erosion and Flood Control Regulations. So there are provisions there. One of them is people should not engage in any earth disturbing activity that will lead to the soil erosion and also flooding. When you erode the soil, when you engage in it, most of these soils will be deposited in the waterways. There will be siltation. So when it rains, the water will not have a room to flow. And likewise, there is provision to do it adhering to building codes and the town planning activities that shouldn't build on the waterways and the protection of the floodplains, and also not to disrupt some of these flood barriers. So the regulation has a lot of provisions that are in place to ensure that we mitigate some of these hazards associated with the flood. So we go out to see what we can do to ensure compliance. And presently, nationwide, our officers are out there trying to educate the general public, to sensitize them on what they can do in order to mitigate against some of these flooding issues.
All right, the intensity and the impact of flooding has also been linked in some states to building on waterways. Particularly in Kano, NEMA reported recently that about 225 communities have been ravaged by flood. Apart from the agencies you mentioned earlier, like NIMET and NEMA, that the agency is collaborating with, is there any building organization or regulatory bodies that your agency is also in collaboration with?
Yes, we also collaborate with other agencies, as I have said, but the collaboration is not strong enough. You know, when it comes to issues to do with building construction, there are agencies that are responsible for giving approval, and there's also the agency responsible for development control. And most of these are within the purview of the states. When you come to FCT, we have that department, and I think it's under the FCT, it's FCDA. So we also collaborate with them because we have a regulation on also to do with construction, National Environmental Construction Sector regulation, where a lot of provisions are met there for people and the corporate bodies to adhere to. When you engage in any construction process, you must adhere to all the codes that are stated there, and also the building plan must be good enough so that when it rains, it doesn't cause a lot of havoc. You shouldn't build on the waterways. All the provisions are there. So we collaborate with them to ensure that people abide by some of these provisions. But it's very, very difficult, as you know, due to a lot of factors. One of them we cannot shy from it. It has to do with corruption. A lot of people will go and find their ways. They know the right thing to do. They'll go and bribe the officers that go out to inspect. Some of them will just turn a blind eye, whether they build on waterways or not. But thank God, the authorities are doing their best. If you look at FCT, the report we have seen some months back, they went and a lot of buildings that were erected on waterways were pulled down. And also in Kano, you know, the recent flood incidents that happened. And one of the major markets there was flooded, leading to a lot of properties worth multi-millions of naira were destroyed. And I saw the governor.
And people were also displaced.
A lot of people. The governor was there, and they identified one of the major causes was some shops were erected on the waterways, and he directed that all those structures and the shops should be pulled out, demolished. So it's a very good thing to do, and I think nationwide the authorities should do the same.
All right, Prof, before I let you go, just a quick one. What is your advice to Nigerians? Because right now, as it is, more rains are being expected according to NIMET's predictions.
My advice to Nigerians is let us do the right thing. If you have drainages around you, make sure you clean the drainages. If it's not open enough, clean it. If you can be able to dig, even if they're temporary ones, try to do that. If you are living within a flood prone area, make sure you make adequate provision. If you feel your house is not safe enough, you better relocate to another place, and so that you won't be caught unexpected. And make sure all of us abide by the environmental rules and regulations in order to have a cleaner and healthier environment for us and the future generations.
Thank you very much, Prof. We're honored today by having you. Thank you for sharing your insight with us.
It's my pleasure.
Thank
you very much.
We've been talking about efforts at mitigating the impact of floods, and our guest has been Professor Aliyu Jarrell, the DG and CEO of NISRA. Thank you for staying. My name is Sobiageli Ugoke.